Welcome to the Surviving BPD Relationship Breakup Podcast. If someone in your life has BPD, you know how difficult it can be, and you need to learn how to heal from those toxic relationships. And that's where this show comes in. Expert education, expert knowledge, expert insight, and delivered with compassion and empathy. With your host, counselor and trauma recovery coach, AJ Mahari. To purchase and book sessions with AJ, go to ajmahari.ca. Now your host, AJ Mahari.
I saw some interesting information out there. It's misinformation, disinformation, and there's lots of that all over the internet. Empower someone with BPD to end their unhealthy life choices. I really hope for your sake you're not trying to do this. I really hope for your sake you don't think this is doable. How in the world is anybody going to be able, or why should you even try, because that is the height of codependency, that you're going to try to empower someone with borderline personality disorder to end unhealthy life choices? BPD is way more complex than that, which I think probably a lot of people listening really know that. So one of the really big consequences, or just realities about lacking self-awareness, which people with BPD really don't have a self to have awareness of. So lacking self-awareness, what happens? Well, people are repeating negative choices, negative life choices, negative relationship choices, just negative choices over and over, and hoping for some kind of a different outcome. This just doesn't apply to people with BPD who are not very aware, don't have a self, a container of self inside, etc. But it also does apply to people with codependency that you're probably doing a lot, or were. If you're in a breakup situation right now, you were probably doing a lot. You might still be thinking a lot about, well, could I have done this, or shouldn't I have done that, or if I'd only just said this, or if I knew this, maybe I could have done this way. So are you still looking at ruminating about how you were repeating maybe what you didn't realize were negative choices in trying to empower someone with BPD to find healthy life choices? People with BPD don't find healthy life choices without considerable time in only a few expert and very BPD directed types of therapy. If you are living with, dating, loving, have been with, or are with someone that you now suspect has borderline personality disorder, while this trying to empower them from, they don't even know themselves, this is trying to empower them to get back, the idealization good times. Trying to empower them is losing yourself. And how are you even going to do that? And if you tried to do that, most people have tried to do that maybe in a different way of putting it, right? Like you've tried to rescue, fix, enable, people please, change, cajole, talk to somebody with BPD to get them to hear you, but it doesn't work, and they're all about themselves, and not exactly the same as narcissists. But it's exhausting. So what are you supposed to do if you wanted to empower someone with BPD to end their unhealthy life choices, which, by the way, is a definition of abject codependency, because you're self-abandoning yourself for somebody who doesn't have a self, and they can't be empowered by you to make any different choices, or to even gain more awareness of a self that isn't there. So how do you get somebody with BPD to see what they're not aware of? How do you get somebody with BPD to want to end healthy life choices when they're not aware they're making unhealthy life choices? How do you get somebody with BPD to want to change when they don't think there's anything wrong with them? How do you empower someone, or try to empower someone while losing yourself? How do you empower someone with BPD to hear you, or see you, or really appreciate you, or relate to you like somebody who doesn't have BPD? Well, you don't, is the simple answer right there. So if you're still trying, you might want to think about, what are you doing and how much is it hurting you? How much did you lose yourself to a borderline, or how much are you still losing yourself to somebody with BPD? Because you're just wanting that all good back. But the person, if you're still loving them with BPD, who idealized you in the beginning, if there was a honeymoon phase in the relationship or not, that person that idealized you and who you thought that person was isn't who they are. So again, not only can you not empower someone with BPD to end unhealthy life choices, because they have a lot more complexity going on in their reality and what's cognitively distorted reality in relating or relationships than simply unhealthy choices. To be trying to empower someone with BPD and thinking that you can get them back, you're loving somebody that you don't even know who they are. Very painful. A lot of loss involved in this. People after these relationships, if you're just trying to survive that BPD relationship breakup right now, whether you're no contact yet, or you're thinking of taking them back, or you're wondering are they going to Hoover you, or you're trying to reverse Hoover them, or in fact your relationship recycling on and off and on and off. Rinse, repeat, go around in circles faster and faster and faster. There is no way. It's one of the most powerless realities, one of the most powerless pursuits in the world is thinking, believing, cognitively distortedly believing that you could empower someone with BPD not only to end life choices. What does that mean? That's fluff and stuff for what the issues are with people with BPD. But trying to get them to change, trying to get them in therapy, wanting back the person you thought they were. This is going to keep you stuck. It's going to keep you ruminating. If you want to stop this, if you want to heal this, if you want to know how to stop the rumination, I'm out here to work with people that resonate with me. So some of the things that this person on YouTube said, which I think are just, it's fluff and stuff, that they're talking about empowering someone with BPD to end unhealthy life choices. What do they mean? Well, like alcohol, drugs, workaholism, food. What does that mean? Food, what? They're under-eating, they're overeating, maybe some misuse of prescription drugs. So this YouTuber actually suggests that empowering someone with BPD to end unhealthy life choices has to do with only addiction, pretty much, right? Like alcohol, workaholism, substance abuse. Those are just symptoms of people with BPD trying to cope with what their core content issues are that they're unaware of and that you might not still well understand. And you might have learned a lot about BPD, but why would you want to try to empower or go back to relationship recycling to try to empower someone with BPD to end what? What unhealthy life choices? Well, so says this nonsense YouTuber that it's just, alcohol, workaholism, substance abuse. No, because that's not the core content of borderline personality disorder. Those are only symptoms of them trying to escape their own pain and all that they don't understand about themselves, and they often don't understand how they manipulate, lie, treat others, abuse others. So those are only but symptoms of how they try to escape what's really going on. Just like a lot of people with codependency might be into workaholism. Had a lot of clients who are either not able to work after a breakup, can't focus, or they just throw themselves back into work, and they might have been kind of like, workaholic situation prior. But that's for coping. It doesn't mean that you're addicted to it. And a lot of people, after they've been with a person with BPD, losing yourself, a lot of people end up drinking a little bit more, maybe having a drinking problem, maybe using some substances, maybe getting some prescription meds that really aren't the answer. They might take the edge off. But again, more than thinking you can empower someone with BPD with what this YouTuber said is basically just their symptomology of how they're trying to cope in unhealthy, maladaptive ways. Ridiculous. And I hope that you aren't doing that, or if you have been, you will stop. But the idea that borderline personality disorder is just equal to or defined by unhealthy life choices is fluff and stuff, flawed logic, disinformation, misinformation, somebody talking out of the side of their mouth there who doesn't know anything about BPD. So what are you supposed to do about the fact that, according to this YouTuber, people with BPD, they just want to stop what they're doing, right? They really want to stop what she thinks are the major problems. Workaholism, substance abuse, alcoholism, food, forgot that one, and things of that nature that are just all addictive, maladaptive coping defenses that people with BPD are often trying to escape their own pain with, and lots of people with codependency are trying to escape their own pain with, especially after a BP relationship breakup, or just like you were with a quiet borderline, boom, discard, you don't know what hit you. The whole thing is a flawed premise in the first place, because again, these are the symptoms of maladaptive coping of people with BPD. These aren't the symptoms of BPD. This is not what you can empower them to change at all. And in fact, some of you might relate to the list there of things that this YouTuber Fluffin' Stuff basically says. And it's like, you may have some of these issues yourself. How do you get the borderline to see the reality of what? What this YouTuber says is their life choices, their unhealthy life choices? That's really a red herring. That is reductionist, ridiculous, not very good information about borderline personality disorder. But how do you get them to stop what they're doing as people with BPD? How do you get them to understand how they're hurting you? How do you get them to understand that you didn't do what they're accusing you of and you're not, quote, the bad guy? Like, how do you do that? Well, never mind what this YouTuber says, because you can't. You can't change them, you can't fix them, can't rescue them, you can enable all you want, you're losing yourself, you're getting in deeper, you're going to be, if you're ghosted, discarded, you're not sure if it's a discard, if you're hoovering, if you're out of the relationship, but you're still really hurting because you can't stand it anymore, but you really still want that good part of the person back. This is when you have to reach out and work with someone. And like I said, I'm out here to work with people that resonate with me, but trust me on this. I've been doing this work for 34 years, and there's some YouTubers out there who don't know what they're talking about, like this one that I'm sort of working off their title and their airy, ridiculous information. Because this YouTuber is talking about how are you going to empower someone with BP to end unhealthy life choices, which are only, as I said, the maladaptive ways they're trying to cope with the core content of a lack of self, of having relational difficulties, of not knowing self, of not being able to tell the difference between self and other. Nobody should set out on this journey, and if you have, you really need to stop. So can you, at least get them to see it? This YouTuber says, whatever that is, the symptoms of how people with BPD often are maladaptively coping, along with, abusing others and starting relationships and coming across like the people, like someone that they're not, etc. How can you do anything about this? Well, the answer is you can't, and that it's highly codependent to try, and that I'm sure many of you have tried. Once there's been a breakup or discard or ghosting or even after relationship recycling, and it's so painful, people really just don't want to give up. But you need to realize these are trauma-bonded, toxic, unhealthy relationships, and it's not all about the borderline. Because I've worked with clients for 34 years, and you get with a borderline doesn't mean that you have the same issues as they do or anything like that, but you're going to end up losing more of yourself than you do have. Something going on inside yourself that you need to understand more about to be able to get into that healing and recovery process that I'm always talking about. So the YouTuber thinks that you can just empower someone with BP to end unhealthy life choices, as they say, workaholism, that fluff stuff. They're maladaptive coping, not core content of BPD. And she just says, well, you have to do it with kid gloves, but you can't bring even their maladaptive coping mechanisms to their conscious awareness because they won't listen. They'll argue with you. They think the problem will be yours. And you know what? You might be having a lot of these same maladaptive coping issues as a person that was in your life or still is with BPD does. But that's not the core content of borderline personality disorder. So this YouTuber thinks the biggest caveat to tell people who've been in relationships with people with BPD who still are, whether that's significant other, whether you're a friend, whether it's a parent that has BPD, whatever the case may be, is that, well, first you have to look at yourself, right? So this is going to get worse before it gets better, because I'm just working off of what this person said, which is, just generally idiotic. So this person would suggest to you that, you have to be a good example to the person with BPD. And I would say to that, wow, is that ever crazy? You know why? They're not even paying attention to you. They experience you as object other. They experience you as wounding parent in any devaluation split. And this YouTuber is saying, you just have to be a good example. And no offense, but if you're involved with a borderline, or you were, and or you're like in a world of hurt right now because it's on off, or you don't know what's going on, and you're lost to yourself even more, and you've been traumatized by the trauma-bonded relationship with a borderline, how are you going to be a good example to them? No, you don't have BPD, you're not like them, but how are you going to be a good example to them when your heart's broken, when you're having trouble functioning or coping in your own life after being in a relationship with somebody with BPD? So, according to this YouTuber, before you can bring up the subject of how to help this borderline, with their, quote, unhealthy life choices, which, again, I want to stress, is nothing to do with what BPD core content is. How do you do that? Well, you have to be a good example. Well, what is this person going on about here? Well, you can't have a drug or alcohol problem yourself. You have to be really careful of prescription medication, says this YouTuber. You can't have any kind of addiction or food addiction or, what is this? It's crazy is what it is. She says, quote, we have to work on ourselves first before we can even bring up anything to the person with BPD. Again, about unhealthy life choices, not even BPD core content, or what you're really feeling or how you're being treated and how much you are hurting in trying to love somebody who can't take in your love and can't love you back. In a 4-minute and 48-second video, thinks they're addressing something important. And the misinformation here that I think could be really harmful to people is that first you have to get your life together to what? To relate to the borderline, to help them, to rescue them, to fix them, to change them. Oh, but wait, no. To empower them with their unhealthy life choices, which they can't stop until they go into therapy for years to deal with the core content of what is borderline personality disorder. Because it's a whole lot more than workaholism for some of them, or addictions, or, drinking too much, or substance abuse, etc. Because that, like I said, I'm going to repeat it, that's just their ways. Often, many people with BPD untreated or not even diagnosed, but with the patterns of BPD, of their unhealthy life choices, but they're not even, people with BPD don't realize their choices because their knee-jerk reactions to cope with the maladaptive feelings, to cope maladaptively with their feelings, their hurt, their inability to connect, inability to love, inability to trust, lack of self, etc. But this person would have you believe, no, you just have to somehow get them to stop their risky maladaptive coping techniques. Yeah. Well, this YouTuber says, well, why do you have to clean your side of the fence first? They don't even put it that way. But why do you have to make sure that you don't have any drinking problem, substance abuse problem, or food problem, or workaholic problem, or whatever these problems are that she thinks are life choices of borderlines, which is really, really ridiculous? Well, in order to bring it up, you first have to fix yourself. That's really what this YouTuber is saying, and it's nuts because no, you need to get into a healing process to heal yourself, to understand why you ended up with somebody with BPD, the unconscious reasons, and how to break that trauma bond. You don't need to be looking at how to clean up your side of the fence in this sort of the maladaptive coping that could be shared by some people with codependency. It's shared with somebody with BPD, lots of people with BPD, in terms of the core content of BPD or out of the core content of the agony of codependency and losing yourself to somebody with BPD. This makes no sense whatsoever, that you would have to somehow perfect yourself in order to point this out to the borderline. And if you don't, which is ridiculous anyway, but let's say this made any sense, it doesn't. But if you didn't address all these maladaptive, or some people may relate to some of these maladaptive, unhealthy life choices which you're maybe falling into or have issues with because of how wounded you are by this borderline, they're driving you insane. Well, then how is it that you're going to fix all this about yourself when you're still with a borderline who's really traumatizing you? It's still a trauma bond, but you have to do that in order to do what for them? What about you? Oh, because if you don't get all your stuff sorted out first on your side of the fence with unhealthy life choices that lots of people with codependency are struggling with. Workaholism, maybe for some it's alcoholism, maybe for some it's, not eating enough or not eating the best food or eating too much food, eating like a little overeating to soothe oneself. These are not borderline traits at all. Then basically, or if you don't do this for yourself somehow in this nonsensical video of this person, then if you bring it up to the borderline, well, they're just going to turn around and say to you, but you drink, or you this, or you that. Well, ask yourself, how does that make any sense about what, this YouTuber, I'm like, whew, like their message is crazy. How would it make any sense? Because a lot of you out there maybe can resonate with this. You might have a few issues right now, and you might have codependency, and you might have been hurt in childhood, and you might not understand why or how. And that doesn't always mean capital T trauma, and I'm out here to help people to figure that out. And I'm becoming quite the expert on just helping people figure that out, who keep going, I had a great childhood. I had a happy childhood. My parents are fine. Nothing ever happened to me. I don't know how I got codependency. I don't know how I got with that borderline. We can figure that out. We can work on that. So if you resonate with me, again, I'm out here to work with you, to help you to understand much more about this and be real about it and help you to heal. So this person is really misguided. The other thing about what she's saying is, even if you don't have any of those unhealthy life choices for coping, for soothing, for dealing with the trauma you're going through or went through with somebody with BPD right now, that's not happening for you. Well, if you're going to mention anything, as you probably well know, about what the borderline has been doing or how they hurt you, or a discard, or like, why did you just stop talking to me if they hoover you back or you get contact again, or which I don't recommend. And then they're just going to give you a bunch of excuses how it's all your fault and it's all about you anyway, because you represent object other wounding parent to them once they've split you to black. And there's really no way back. You can get back maybe for a short time, and those cycles will go around and around, and you'll keep getting spit out the other end, which people really, really lose themselves to this. So I don't know what this person is going on about empowering someone with BPD to end unhealthy life choices. Because that would simply be like, say there's a problem in your house, right? And you got a lot of mold and everything, and there's some water leakage, and there's something going on in the foundation of your house, in the basement. So you're just going to like beautify the top 2 floors. That'll do it, right? Because that's kind of what this person's going on. Like, if you could help the borderline with this, but first you got to make sure you're not having any of those issues in life, then otherwise they'll turn it around on you. They're always going to turn it around on you anyways. And by the way, there is no reason on God's green earth that you should have to try to change yourself, strive for perfection, or think that you need to be better for somebody with borderline personality disorder, because they're not going to see you, they're not going to hear you, they're not really experiencing you for you. And even if you have some problems in your life, you're probably pretty well put together. You might have gone through a lot in your childhood, but the thing is, this is just ridiculous, so I thought I'd talk about it. So this YouTuber thinks that unless you make yourself perfect first, that if you try to tell a borderline about their unhealthy life choices, and again, this is all airy-fairy stuff, because it's not even about the core content of what borderline personality disorder is, why it hurts so much to be with somebody with BPD, why it's a trauma bond, why they traumatize you. She's just saying, well, they'll turn it around on you If you don't have all your stuff together, it doesn't make any sense. And about this YouTuber, I say, shame on her for such crap. So the YouTuber says I guess meaning all of you out there, we have to clean our side of the street before we have this conversation with the person with BPD, which that's a direct quote out of this nonsense video. How does that make any sense in the world when your side of the street, you might now be starting to realize you've been triggered by a borderline, that there's something going on inside of you, but you might still be really focused on what the borderline, how they've really affected you, what they did to you, how they've changed you, how you've lost yourself. But this idea that you have to clean your side of the street because you're going to then empower them with unhealthy life choices that aren't even the core content of BPD. I don't know what's wrong with this YouTuber, but wow, I hope you're not thinking like this. And if you've been thinking anything like this, I've never heard anything so out there as this in my life. Please know it won't work. And please know that even if you were perfect, you'd still experience everything you've experienced from a person with BPD in your life, be it your mother and or a partner or an ex, or be it a friend, etc. Because what happens to you with a borderline is not about you, though all they'll say is it's all about you. So this YouTuber she's misguided, giving misinformation, and it's all like air, fluffy stuff with no there. It's crazy. So she goes on to say that you need to be an example for the person with borderline personality disorder. Well, no, you don't, and it doesn't work. Because people with BPD they're not going to be helped, fixed, rescued, or changed by you at all, no matter who you are. That's not a knock against you. You might be a wonderful person. In fact, most of the clients I work with are wonderful people. Might have had some woundedness in childhood, etc. That's what we have to look at in the process of healing and recovery work. But the thing is, it's not about you, what borderlines do to you. And yet I guess this YouTuber would have people believing something else. Being a positive example for somebody with BPD is like putting your head in the toilet, and if you could literally flush it and it came apart off your body, that's what that would be like doing to yourself. It's self-harm to try to be that positive example for somebody with BPD and especially untreated. What is this person on about? If you've been a healthy, positive example for them, you might well have been in many, many, many ways. They don't take it in. They don't understand. They don't have a container of self to put it inside of. They can't change. They have emotionally arrested development. They're maybe they get a year older every year, right? And they might accrue more intellect, but emotionally they are still children. And they look to you for identity unconsciously. And they look to you as a parent. So again, I don't think this YouTuber understands BPD that well at all, if at all. If you say that to a borderline, I feel that you have, quoting this YouTuber, I feel that you have a lot of regret and sadness, that you're really, beating yourself up over this. Let's talk about this. Person with BPD is going to go, are you out of your mind? This is what you do to yourself. I know what you're talking about. I don't do that to myself. Rescue attempt number 999,000 fail because people with BPD can't hear this, even if she was anywhere near anything that made sense. So this YouTuber is defining borderline personality disorder as alcoholism or substance abuse, turning to food, or workaholism. I think that's what she thinks the traits of BPD are. Seriously, that's how she's putting this across. It's crazy. It's not true. And again, I'll just repeat. Those are maladaptive coping mechanisms to try to soothe pain that borderlines don't know how to soothe, cope with, deal with, feel. And it can be similar for some people with codependency, having one or more of these issues after a breakup with your own pain and agony of what just happened to me here. Like, because so many people, most people in that relationship with a borderline, they've never heard of borderline personality disorder before. So what is this person on about? As if, like, borderline personality disorder is only these maladaptive coping mechanisms in this little category of what she's listed, which is, frankly, ladies and gentlemen, asinine. So she also thinks that, borderlines are just angry with themselves. But again, I want to stress to you, they don't have a self. They don't know themselves. Unstable sense of identity. They don't have an identity. They're seeking identity through you, largely also because of lack of object constancy, and they don't have object constancy or object permanence because they don't have a self to contain it within. They never learned how to do that, in the early childhood stages before they had an emotional arrested development. That is the psychological death of the otherwise burgeoning authentic self, according to Melanie Klein in Object Relations Theory. This person is just putting fluff and stuff out there. And yeah, they purchased something like 50, 60,000 subscribers for their channel in March and April. And now they're like over 100, they're at 119,000 fake subscribers. I don't even know if the 63 they were at prior to like 30 days ago were all real subscribers. But their views are in the toilet, I think because the information sucks and because they keep buying subscribers. And on this particular video, which has nothing of import to say, empower someone with BPD to end unhealthy life choices, as if that's going to be any solution to what's really going on with people with BPD, in the core of what that means and why you trauma bond with them and why you get so hurt by them. Well, this person has bought I don't know how many thousands of views on this video. Fake person, well, not a fake person, but the person is inauthentic as all get out of here, puts out this fluff and stuff, pays for subscribers, buys herself a YouTube plaque, doesn't feel like she needs to earn it, has nothing of substance to say about BPD whatsoever, or for others, for people like yourselves who need to understand more about what is and isn't possible. This is just fluff and stuff from somebody who's trying to be so bloody important. You gotta ask yourself, is she a borderline or is she a narc? But the information is dangerous. And this person's spending money like crazy to make herself look really important, like she really is an expert on the subject, when in fact, not really. So, this YouTuber goes on that, if you haven't started your own healthy journey, you need to do that before you have any of these, as she would put it, quote, conversations with a person with BPD. Well, like, it's so in essence, what I'm hearing from her, it's like she's really blaming everybody who's with somebody with BPD for that you're not perfect enough to be able to bring things up to them, to help them, empower them to end unhealthy life choices. And remember, people with BPD, this is why this is so airy-fairy BS stuff. People with BPD, those life choices she's referring to aren't consciously made choices, aren't actually life choices. They're maladaptive coping defense mechanisms and escapism from their agony, and they're not even the core content of what a person with BPD brings to a relationship, which is just a lot of pain, a lot of splitting, a lot of devaluation after the idealization, a lot of devaluation, a lot of complaining, perhaps silent treatment, perhaps raging. And this person is suggesting that the problem is yours because you can't fix them until you're more or some kind of perfect. I've never heard anything so inane in my life. So she says you can be the person that can be there for the borderline. You can be the person that can walk them through this process. And what process is she referring to? The substance abuse, the alcoholism, the workaholism, the food issues, whether they're anorexic or overeating and workaholism? Really? Those aren't traits of BPD, ladies and gentlemen. What is up with this? She says it could be really rewarding if you walk that journey to somehow finding your own, quote, perfection, unquote. and cleaning up your side of the yard so you can then approach the borderline. No self-defeating all day long. And I've always used the analogy when talking about how these relationships are so not going to work out. They're so destined to rupture as soon as they begin, but nobody knows that. The borderline doesn't know it. The person with codependency doesn't know it at all. Is because it's a trauma bond. It's not a healthy relationship. It's not worth the investment. You just keep losing yourself. So in this video, I'm doing a response here, but the thing is, in this video, this person doesn't even know how to explain BPD, and she's kind of like more or less telling everybody, it's like, you have to get yourself all right and perfect first, and then maybe you can talk to the borderline about this stuff out here that's unhealthy life choices. But that doesn't even mean you get to talk to the borderline about what borderline personality disorder really is and how they're really hurting you and what's really happening for you. So I hope you don't buy into any of this kind of information out there, because the problem, people with codependency have their own issues, yes, granted, but not to the same degree as people with BPD. And she's just trying to make some kind of crazy fluff and stuff argument for, in fact, you can help them, or you could empower them, or you could change them. And that's not true, and I really want you to hear how that's not true, because this is what so many people after the relationships are torturing themselves with, in rumination, and just constant focus on, well, but like if I didn't say this way, or if I'd have known this about borderlines, I'd have tried that, or I would have understood this more. And this is all like what you believe might be true. But you don't get a do-over. You shouldn't want a do-over. You should want to heal yourself. Oh, she says, be the example. So you can get them to want to answer the questions that you might have to ask them so they can open up. Yeah, because that's what untreated borderlines do all day long, is open up, right? No, absolutely not. You probably know that. They fight you, they blame you, they shame you, they scream at you, they punish you. What is this woman going on about? She's blaming people who are with people with BPD for the fights and the arguments and the blaming and the shaming. She is actually victim shaming and blaming. But how they're going to use good strategies to self-soothe people with BPD when they don't have a self to even soothe. And they lack that awareness. This person, I don't know what's wrong with them, but something is. And they're really trying to tell people like you that it's your fault, your responsibility, up to you. When that's what so many of you already think and erroneously believe based on something that happened in your childhood that wounded you. You don't need to be blamed and shamed by somebody out there buying her way up to 119,000 subscribers, pretending that she has a clue what she's talking about. Also, you're supposed to be the example and then ask the borderline, why are they turning to that addiction? Now, not everybody with borderline personality disorder, believe it or not, turns to an addiction, right? Or turns to something to a degree to where it is an addiction. But they do have a myriad of other maladaptive coping mechanisms. I mean, just think about trying to tell a borderline or ask them something about what you're really feeling, how hurt you are, what they just did to you, how it impacted you, and you just get yourself into a jade, quote, conversation, unquote. You end up justifying, arguing, defending, explaining, because they can't hear you, because they blame you, because they're like, I didn't do that, what are you talking about? The gaslighting. But this person's saying, but like, it's your fault if you can't find a way to empower these people with what are just the ways that they're trying to soothe in unhealthy ways, but she has touched zero on what borderline personality disorder is or why they would have these maladaptive coping mechanisms. And at the heart of BPD is definitely an inability to soothe self, but that's nobody else's job. You can't soothe a borderline. You might have tried. You can't. You can't fix it. You can't make it all right. You can't get them to hear you. You can't get them to love you, trust you, believe in you, want to stay with you. They have the approach avoidance conflict. Oh, they get too close. They feel annihilated. or annihilation fear and engulfment fear, and they got to get away, and then maybe they ghost you. Maybe it's a real established pattern, and then when they get away, they feel like you abandoned them because they don't have a self. They don't think they're doing anything wrong. So I really, really had to do this because this YouTuber is just full of it, and she is victim shaming and blaming people who are with borderline personality disorder because she's that uninformed. Too busy buying all her subs, too busy buying her views to really know what she's talking about at all. These people like this woman, are dangerous. Oh, so you're supposed to want to help a borderline lessen their regret and make positive life choices in their lives. Borderline personality disorder interrupts a person's ability to be able to make any positive life or most positive life choices. Some may find careers, different, degrees on the spectrum, and the quiet borderline can be more high functioning. But the more high functioning a quiet borderline is, the less likely they're to get, even if they go to see a psychiatrist to get assessed, the less likely they're to be diagnosed. And if they're diagnosed, the less likely they are to be treatable because they have much higher defenses, stronger defenses than your more low-functioning, petulant type borderline. So this woman then says that, all of you out there who is somebody with BPD and you're suffering terribly, and after the relationship breakup or discards and the relationship recycling and the on and off and all your horrible rumination and the way that this disrupts people's lives, which I'm sure many of you can relate to, she's just saying, quote, we on her channel, which is her, but she's going, we are doing this information, we are doing this series because we really want to help you understand. Understand what? She's victim blaming and she's victim shaming. And what do I mean by that? Everybody who gets victimized by somebody with BPD, she's trying to tell you that it's your fault, that you can't, that you're supposed to be perfect on your side of the fence to empower the person with BPD with their unhealthy life choices, never mind the core content of what BPD really means, which I know I've been somewhat repetitive. I find this to be, I can't even find an adjective, and the fact that I've been watching this person's channel, not watching their content or listening, no, that would be too painful, but I have checked and documented that they've now bought almost 50,000 subscribers in a month and a half to make themselves look important and like an authority, which they are not. And I guess to get themselves a plaque to do even more of the plastic, inauthentic stuff that they do. But the message, so I mean, whatever that YouTuber does, maybe she's buying her way to 200,000 or 1 million, who knows, who cares. But the point is, that's just another sign out there to beware of people who they're putting their own importance first and they don't know what they're talking about. That's pretty nuts. And the other thing I noticed is like just what kind of a title does empower someone with BPD to end unhealthy life choices? And then the meat of the message of this YouTuber doesn't know what they're talking about is, it's all up to you. You need to clean your side of the fence. There's something wrong with you. You're not perfect enough for the borderline. I mean, really, I think that I don't think I'm misinterpreting what she actually didn't say in words, but put out there in this garbly, gucked up, whatever kind of like fluffing stuff, not even actual real information. That's going to do a lot of damage. I don't think really anybody watches her channel a whole lot anymore. It's hard to tell because now she's buying views, and I don't care about that, right? Like my channel is wherever it is on YouTube. That doesn't matter to me. But like if you're going to falsely engage with people, as this YouTuber is, by buying over 50,000 subscribers in about 2 months now, if that, going up to 119,000, just keeps crawling up every single day by about 1,000, which is not natural growth. When most of her videos have like, she's got podcasts on there with 83 views, lots of like 200 and something views after like a year. This is, with the odd one being higher, what is this person doing? And more to the point, it's not really about that person, but the information, the person's inauthenticity of the lack of authenticity of their information. the lack of authenticity, that they don't have the expertise, that they're buying all these subs and views to kind of suggest that they do. And then they come up with this kind of a crazy message, which is nothing but blaming the codependent who gets so hurt and loses self to a borderline. And I just find it totally crazy, totally dangerous. So I'm not really here to vilify the YouTuber, although I have no respect for them. I don't care. They'll do whatever they want on their channel. But these kind of messages are just horrific for people to hear. And so I'm always about keeping it real. I'm always trying to, I don't like to go at people, but maybe I will be talking more about this person's content on their channel, because so much of it is so airy, so fluff and stuff, like it's not getting to the issues. And she's telling you that on your side of the fence, you need to be perfect in order to empower and help some borderline with whatever, when you can't do that. You can't rescue, you can't fix, you can't change them, you can't make them aware, all of that. And the damage that could be done, right? People have to be discerning. There's all kinds of stuff all over the internet. But it's not this one person buying themselves up to look more credible, I guess, because people do. A lot of people out there think whatever the numbers of your podcast followers or your YouTube channel, that makes you more credible. Well, that could work for some people, but I mean, I think I'm plenty credible. You get to decide that, whether you believe me or not. I'm not here to work with you if I resonate with you. And I really take umbrage at this kind of behavior by other YouTubers, this kind of behavior and nonsense of messages that they don't have a clue what they're talking about, because it's not going to help anybody. I don't think there's any comments on that thing. I think, it had something, that video had, before all the... It's not like she got all these subscribers that are real and they watched the video. She bought views to make it look like all the subscribers watched the video. But then if you scroll around her channel, most of her view totals are really low. And so she picks one and buys views for it. So there's nothing going on over there but nonsense, is what I'm trying to say. And then you have to look at the information of somebody so desperate to seem so, quote, credible. It's not really about vilifying this person, and yet we have to ask the question, what are people up to if that's all that matters to them? Like, my YouTube channel, I think, is around 40,000 subscribers. I've been on YouTube for 15 years. I don't get big views. I know what my analytics are on the podcast as well. It goes pretty all right, but are there people out there to get like 10 times what I... Sure, but like, who cares? You got to believe in your message. And if you say you're an expert, you better bloody well be one. And you better be able to help people. And so I just find it dangerous. I just wanted to say something about it. I'm not using the name. But this idea that you, on top of all your pain, and wherever you are in a stage of, the breakup, the ghosting, the discard, the maybe trying to move forward, but the rumination and the agony that is the trauma of a BPD relationship and breakup or ghosting or discard, that this woman, in her trying to be so bloody important and, quote, popular, whatever she's doing, would be victim blaming and shaming people with codependency for not empowering borderlines to make healthier choices. Some of the most egregious, dangerous information I've ever heard in my life. So yeah, I'm not going to be quiet about it. I'm going to be vocal about it. And it's not to compare myself to that at all. I believe in my work. I have 34 years experience. I help people to heal. But I know that there's really, sadly, too many people out there. There's so many of you people out there that might be resonating with what I'm saying right now about, how much you went through with the borderline, and you might still want them back, and you're in agony now, and you need a healing and recovery journey. And trust me, you can't do it by yourself. You can't just move on. This is a huge deal, and you need to understand more about yourself to know why. It's what the borderlines do, and it's the toxic relationship, the trauma bond, but it's even more than that. Because no, you're not at fault. No, you don't have to be perfect to be with a friggin' borderline. It's not going to work anyway. And even if you were perfect, it still wouldn't have worked. And you might still be in the agony you're in right now. And you just can't stand somebody who puts out, or can't stand, and never mind stand somebody, I don't know, or whatever, can't stand the idea that people put out such nonsense that will feed into your agony and pain, not help you with it, not help you start to reframe it, not help you to know what I'm always saying is these relationships don't work out and you need to find your way out, and you need to find your way to help and healing and recovery. And if I resonate with you, I'm out here to work with you. And the other thing I wanted to say, I think I started to say there is, there are so many people out there like you right now in agony after, or in relationship recycling, or being discarded, ghosted by somebody with BPD. It's like, we don't have to compete with nonsense like buying subscribers like this YouTuber, or buying views like this YouTuber, or trying to look so friggin' important like this YouTuber, who's also probably had, cosmetic stuff done to them and all. Well, they have had. So they're not authentic in any way, shape, or form, and they're really not that bright, and their grammar's enough to kill somebody. But my point is, that kind of misinformation could push some people over the edge of whether they're going to survive or not after a BPD relationship breakup. Because one thing I know about a lot of people with codependency, most everyone I've ever worked with, thousands, maybe more than thousands of clients in 34 years, and clients I'm working with now, everybody feels like somehow they could do something better, they should do something better, if only they did this or only that. And the thing is, so she feeds right into that with that crazy message of, empower someone with BPD to end unhealthy life choices. By the way, even if they could start to end some of those unhealthy life choices, which really can't happen until they get into the core content and therapy over many years for BPD, but even if they could, they'd still have all the core content, all the issues of borderline personality disorder that would be annihilating you, or does annihilate you if you recycle the relationship, if you speak to them again, if you keep going back for more, and you're wondering why you can't stop ruminating, and you're wondering why you're not making any traction in healing. It's hard enough when you're staying away from them, when you basically get to no contact, and then you have to struggle with that. So if you hear anything I said, the other point I didn't make, sorry, tried so hard to make it so many times, is like the other thing that really just, I don't know, makes me really passionate about people out here like that YouTuber doing that kind of nonsense, is the fact that it's not about numbers, it's not about competition, because unfortunately there are so many people like you out there, like thousands, if not more, maybe a couple million at this point, been with cluster Bs, been with borderlines, been hurting your own family of origin in whichever ways. And the thing is, there's enough of all of you out there for all of us to be having people to work with. But I don't know how she helps anybody with that attitude and nonsense information. But the point is, it's not a competition. And the information that I give in this podcast and whatever I put on my YouTube channel, or when I flip a podcast up to the YouTube channel, I'm not worried about numbers. Like, that's what social media inculcates us with. And that person obviously doesn't have a very high IQ, or they would know that they're trapped in the dastardly, psychological matrix of what social media is trying to do to all of us. Well, I step out of that and I reject that, because guess what? The information is what matters, and whoever I reach. And if I don't reach lots of people because I haven't bought 100,000 subscribers recently or whatever she just did, well, then, we can't resonate with everybody, and there is no competition. And this is what I don't understand about what I think a lot of other YouTubers are doing. And yes, I'm a YouTuber besides podcasting. Mind you, I'm about fed up with YouTube for sure. Because maybe many people do think the higher your subscriber count, the more views your videos get, the more credibility you have. But it's not necessarily true at all. I mean, somebody could have a huge channel that grew organically. And does that mean that well, I shouldn't put it this way, but does it mean they really know a whole lot more than I do? Probably not. Maybe they have a more structured way of saying things, maybe, but they're going to resonate. They might get hundreds of thousands of views, which I never get. That's fine on the YouTube channel. But they'll resonate. A lot of these people are saying what people want to hear, so they really engage with it, right? And I'm trying to say, really share information you need to hear, you need to consider. And then if I resonate with you, I'm out here to work with you, should you want to make that choice. But I'm not thinking that I have to save the world. I'm not thinking, like, even if I had a channel that had millions of subscribers on it, which I couldn't care less about, there's still going to be so many people that would listen to something I had to say and not resonate with me at all. So I don't understand this mentality, not only of this YouTuber, who knows how many of them. I mean, I think lots of YouTubers have grown way bigger than I have on YouTube, and it's organic. I don't think they're all buying their subscribers. But the one that I've been referring to here definitely has. And you just need to look at her social blade to know that. You just need to look at the analytics available online to know that. And you just have to look at all her like really low view total things in the last 4 years. So the bottom line is, this person doesn't really know what they're talking about. This person is a danger, as I've seen many other people be a danger to people. But I'm not in control of that. I'm not out to rescue everybody from that. I simply put out this message so you know that what that person was saying, but it's a good message to put out of my own, that you can empower a person with BPD. You can't fix them, change them, rescue them. You can enable them. You can lose yourself. You'll be in agony. You need a healing recovery process afterwards, because many people with codependency have a cluster B parent. Not all, but many. And then there are some, I shouldn't say many, but people with codependency that I'm working with now and I've worked with over years, and they come to me and they're like, well, I was with this borderline and all, they tell me all about that, of course, right? And we want to work on that and what happened, what's your understanding, how you're going to stay out of that, relational trap of allowing somebody to continue to abuse you. Because once you know what's happening, then yes, you have more responsibility in getting yourself out of there, even though it's really hard. It's a super dilemma for people. This YouTuber blaming people as if, like, you got to clean up your side of the fence first so you can, be, quote, good enough for the borderline? So you could, unquote, quote, be good enough for the borderline that they'll hear you and change, unquote? No, this is all nonsense. I don't understand it. I vehemently disagree with it. And so I just thought it was something really important to talk about. And I'll have much more coming. And it's all about wherever you are today, whether you're getting help or not, whether in the case of my information here, whether you resonate with it, whether you're wanting to get some help, and maybe that is with me and maybe it's with somebody else, whatever the case, right? So the bottom line is, though, I get passionate about misinformation. And so it looks like I'm doing something that, like a lot of people in the niche area, BPD, NPD, codependence, these trauma-bonded relationships, well, maybe they don't say what I say, but I'm straight up, I will call out the ones who are not knowing what they're talking about, or playing other kind of games, being dishonest, being inauthentic. Because why should anybody trust them to help them when they're obviously struggling with something that they could use a lot of, professional help for? And it's not just that one YouTuber. She got her whole game going on there. And then there's others. And could it be that other people resonate? I don't think so much with her. But yeah, there's a few others out there that I really disagree with what they're doing, what they're saying, the way they're saying it. But, they're popular, more popular than me, because they're, again, they're targeting, taking advantage of people at their most vulnerable with all this kind of like quick talk about they can help you get your ex back or this or the other thing. And somehow it's like this other woman, how it's all your responsibility. You're supposed to be perfect on your side of the fence. Then you get to talk to the borderline. Like, get out of here with that. That's crazy. So the bottom line is, do people, they don't flock to that woman necessarily, but do people flock to the guy who's always saying, oh, I can help you get your ex back, and and he has just a gigantic toxic masculinity message for men? Yeah, people do flock to him because you know what? That's what people want to hear. That's where they're at, and they resonate with him. So good. Go pay him. Go see how you do with that. You know, people gonna. So my point of mentioning this other YouTuber, etc., isn't because I'm trying to say anything about what you should choose or do. I'm just trying to put out solid information where I see extreme misinformation that makes no sense, and somebody so desperate to look so important and so on top of being such an expert when they have nothing but crap like that to offer. Okay? So, but everybody has to be discerning for themselves. But the main message of this and why I took it on is, first of all, the way that they talk about you can empower someone with BPD to end unhealthy life choices is a clickbait title, is misinformation, because those unhealthy life choices aren't even, like I said, anything to do with core content. They're the result, you know, their defenses and escapism to get away from the agony people with BPD are in that they share around too much by traumatizing others. But it's not even talking about what really is BPD and why it's not good for you to think that you can empower them, change them, rescue them, fix them. Oh, if you could just have that conversation with them. Well, most people that I work with as clients, and probably most of you listening right now, you probably tried to talk to them 100,000 times. So I'm being, like hyperbolic. But you probably tried to talk to them so many times, and you probably feel like you still need to and you still want to because they got to hear you at some point, right? Well, no, they can't, they won't, and they don't. And they will continue to abuse you and blame you. And people with codependency need to realize, for whatever the reasons are in childhood, so if you think you had a happy childhood, hey, welcome you to book some sessions with me. Let's explore that. Because chances are, no, you didn't. You might have had a really overwhelming, not overwhelming, say like more high percentage of some happiness in your childhood. Maybe you had parents that were doing the best they could, but something still wounded you. Because codependency is its own, trauma or adverse childhood experience. Adverse childhood experience, trauma or adverse childhood experience response. It's a maladaptive coping response to survive what's going on in family of origin. People don't need that if everything's really all just hunky-dory and going fabulously. So it's not always a parent's fault. It's not always parents doing something with malice. It can often be that. But people with codependency need to realize, like so many people with codependency, that's why this woman's message is horrific, because you're already blaming yourselves. You lack self-esteem. You lack self-worth. You might feel like you got a lot of that going on in other areas of your life, but relationally, you've been wounded somewhere along the line, and then these borderlines just, they traumatize. And a lot of people come out of those relationships with PTSD. And so I just want to put out other information for others to hear that I know makes more sense, I know has more applicability, but again, people will only really hear me if I resonate with them, and that's fine. But I hope that whatever over there with that crazy message doesn't get people to resonate, and people don't resonate with it, because that would be self-harm on your part to do that. That would be like it's a way of it's almost like her message is just straight up abusive to people with codependency, because she is blaming people with codependency that you're not, quote, perfect enough on your side of the fence before you could dare talk to the borderline and hope that you would get anything but fought with and argued with and etc. Well, when they're untreated, or if they have the patterns of BPD and they're not even diagnosed, it has nothing to do with you. Why? When you try to talk to them about anything, or help them, or fix them, or try to rescue them, or even if you're trying to empower them for some reason, it's not going to work, and it's not your fault that it's not going to work, and you're being victimized. And the answer is no contact, and the answer is getting into a healing and recovery journey, And I'm passionate about this, ladies and gentlemen, and I don't care what other people think of me out there. I'm going to give it to you straight. I'm going to keep it real to help you heal, whether you want to work with me or not. I want to plant seeds. I want people to understand that these relationships with people with BPD don't work out. That's a harsh message, but it's true. I've never seen a relationship work out, and working with clients for 34 years, doing some, couples counseling, etc., working with two clients, like the person that comes to me with codependency, and then maybe they get their BPD person to work with me separately even. Never. And I don't think it hasn't worked out because, I work with people with BPD as well. But you see, if they're not where they need to be and they're not wanting help for the reasons they need to want help, if they're just trying to save a relationship, well, look the heck out, because they're still not taking any responsibility. They still think it's all your fault. And I think I'm going to do the next podcast I'm going to do is going to be, do people with BPD really have a personality underneath it all? Because I saw something online about that. This is the kind of information you're going to get from a lot of people with BPD out there who are untreated and really in a world of hurt and really misinformed and lost and don't understand what they're going through and have no self-awareness, no self, etc. That somebody out there with BPD actually tried to defend in a very aggressive, hostile, and abusive way somebody's question, do people with BPD have a personality underneath it all? The answer is absolutely no, they don't. And you can't come along and create one for them, because they are unconsciously trying to seek identity and or find a personality and something to be or stand for or get interested in through you. And then we all know how that goes, right? Because it doesn't last, because they don't have a container of self. They have emotional arrested development. Unfortunately, emotionally, they are stuck in early childhood. So, to be in a relationship with somebody with BPD, whether it's your mother, it was your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your husband, your wife, a friend, whatever the case, or even to deal with these people as landlords or bosses or just people out in the world, you can't relate to them. They won't hear you. And if they hear something in a moment, or they seem to have intellectually some kind of fleeting awareness, it's fleeting, and that's all it is. And I'm also going to have something coming on why the borderlines hoover, and how can you know for sure that nothing's changed when they hoover you. Because boy, do I have a message for you on that. Because it's only going to be the borderlines that don't get help, the borderlines that aren't getting help, the ones that aren't even diagnosed, that are going to keep turning back to you or the ex prior, the ex, or who's ever available, because they don't have a clue what they're doing, and they use people, and they don't know how to love, and they don't know how to trust. I mean, they don't have a self. How could they, if you can't trust yourself, which a lot of people with codependency are in a bit of a pickle with that struggle, and if you don't know yourself, people with codependency don't know themselves entirely as much as you think you do, but you're not like the borderline who doesn't know themselves at all. And if you don't have enough self-esteem, and you don't have boundaries, and you don't have strong knowing of yourself, healthy relationship to and with yourself with codependency, you're going to be doubting your decisions. You're going to be all over the map, giving benefit of the doubt to all the wrong people, recycling these relationships, etc. But how dare that freaking nut, YouTuber, person, pretender, say that you have to get your life and your side of the fence in order before you can dare talk to a borderline about all the... Because I would recommend you don't talk to the borderline about all these issues, because they're not going to change anything, not going to fix anything, not going to help the relationship. And all of this at base is, of course, not what any of you... Some of you may well know it now, but it's not what any of you want to hear, because you want that person back, and all you can't stop ruminating, so many people, on how amazing he or she was because in the beginning, but that's not who they are. And you stay kind of enamored, idealizing and in love with who you thought they were. So then that's where you step into, unfortunately, this painful world of not only having been abused and traumatized, But now you're in some fantasy bonded, betrayal bond, trauma bond, as if they are the person that you, quote, fell in love with, unquote. No, they're not. No, they didn't love you. No, they can't love you. They can't love themselves. So, please know there's no way to empower a person with borderline personality disorder to make better or healthier choices in this nonsense way of this YouTuber's message. But more to the point, there is no way for these relationships to work out when somebody has untreated BPD or the patterns of BPD and maybe so comorbidity with NPD or whatever, and they haven't had any treatment. No. And if you try to get them to treatment or they hoover you and say, well, I'm going to go to treatment, it's always not going to be true. And the time that they need in that treatment, you can't invest in that again because it's too much time. What about you? And the other thing you need to know is once you've been traumatized by somebody with BPD, maybe they monkey branched, maybe they cheated on you, they just ghosted you, they just outright discarded you. They just left you like no closure, no nothing, don't care about you, could never hear you, it was always about them, they used you. Why on earth would you want that back? So think about all that while you're ruminating about all the fantastical good in the beginning that really was just a siren song dance of, oh my God, you were going to get so wounded and so hurt. If you can today, or if you already have, continue to, stop trying to communicate to borderlines. They're not listening. And what's the number one thing about that? If you're talking and nobody's listening to you, why are you still talking? You trying to convince the borderline, or you trying to convince yourself? And if you're trying to convince yourself, you're taking yourself right back into the lion's mouth where you do not need to be. It's only going to elongate and worsen your pain.
You've been listening to the Surviving BPD Relationship Breakup Podcast with your host, counselor and trauma recovery coach, AJ Mahari. For more or get sessions with AJ, go to ajmahari.ca. See you next time.